So, hello to anyone who might be lurking in the chat and or watching in the future to Media Musings. This is the last movie we've picked out for our American Mythos Mega Month. And next week will be just kind of a overall recap discussion. But anyways, we're discussing 2004's iRobot, or how I like to call it, iRobot, but only if you haven't actually read any Asimov.
I haven't read any Asimov.
Yeah.
I'm a bad nerd.
Yeah, no, so I'm gonna go ahead and before we get into this proper, before we get into the discussion proper, I'm going to just get my little mini rant out there about the title of the movie. I understand why it's the title of the movie because that's the most well-known Asimov title, and it is a catchy name. But iRobot is actually not adapted from iRobot. iRobot, the book, is a collection of short stories about the robot psychologist character who was inserted into this movie. So she's like the only so there is a character from iRobot who is placed into the movie. But basically it's about her diagnosing robots doing weird things. Like, it's a collection of short stories. The actual, like, the murder mystery part of this movie was lifted from a different Asimov novel called The Caves of Steel, where a cop is it is the murder mystery plot from this movie essentially, without the robot uprising bit that was added on to this movie specifically. So, like, this is one of those movies, in my opinion, where it's good on its own terms, but as an adaptation,
it's not worth the paper it's written on. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the murder mystery bit as an adaptation of the Caves of Steel, it gets a lot of the attitudes. It gets the feel right. Though I may be off on that because it's been a while since I read that book.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say, having not read any Asimov books, this film is first and foremost a Will Smith film, not a sci-fi film.
Yeah.
And I say that because there are a lot of moments in this film where I'm going to point and gibber and say, "Oh, look, Will Smith does something else homage."
But I mean, it kind of feels like, for the most part, every Will Smith movie is a Will Smith movie before it's anything else.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he writes that into his contracts. I wouldn't be surprised.
There
are certain things that are just very Will Smith.
Like, the only exception I could say that, like, Pursuit of Happiness doesn't feel like a Will Smith movie.
No. But there are certain things you always get in a Will Smith movie. You always get a shower scene. You always get him jiving to some classic, either reggae or hip-hop music. You always get him having a fight and somehow landing on strategically placed tubes that act like a bouncy castle. It's oddly specific, but it happens way too much to the guy. You always get the, "You're an A, I'm black, this is not going to work." In Men in Black, it's you're an alien, I'm black, this will never work. In this one, it's you're a cat, I'm black, I'm not going to get hurt again. It's there. Yeah. You always get him doing something incredibly improbable, but not impossible in his stunts. I refer you to the motorcycle on gravel. There's a reason that shot of him riding that motorcycle is so full of smoke. It's because the damn thing is he's struggling to keep it upright on the gravel. So he has his little bit parts. You know, Tom Hanks pisses in every movie. Will Smith does these things. It's the thing. Okay. This movie, I think I'd forgotten how much about racism this movie is.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not subtle. It is a bit of a anvil to the head. Robot arm head. Conflating the racism, which post BLM leaves a bad taste when you've got the black cop character being the avatar of anti-robot prejudice.
Yeah.
But it does make some important points that I'm sure we'll get to. It's a very old world versus new world. What amuses me is these characters are in their mid-30s, you would think. 40s push. They are, even in the worst case scenario, 2000, if like they were born in 2004 when the characters.
Yeah.
They are old enough to remember remote control shit. Yeah. There are not are they Gen Alpha after 2000? Gen Z? I don't know. They are old enough to remember how a fucking remote control music center works.
Yeah.
They are old enough not to be afraid of gas-powered vehicles.
Yeah.
The kids born in 2004 are already in some countries old enough to drink and vote.
Yeah.
So that's a bit. I mean, cultural amnesia for old tech exists. Like, if you put an iPod in my hands right now, even though I owned two different ones, I probably couldn't get it working.
Yeah.
You know, if you put an old Nokia in my hands now, I'd probably just about remember how to unlock it. Like the main button and the star button, and I would then, but it would take, you know, the skills are there, but they're rusty.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff in this that are obviously jokes don't quite land now we're closer to the date it's supposed to be based in.
Yeah.
But then some of the things that are probably weren't jokes are fucking hilarious now we're closer to that date because they're accurate.
Yeah.
Contactless card payments.
Yep.
I don't know about in America, but over here, I can't remember the last time I physically put my card in a machine and put the PIN number in. You know, you've got 2 beers were what were they? £46.50 for 2 beers. That's inflation right there. Like, that's inflation. You've got the reliance on technology and the automation of it. And I do like that actually it wasn't just this utopia where everyone owns a robot and everyone can afford one.
Yeah.
And they used concepts we were familiar with in 04 and are still familiar with to spread robots. Lotteries.
Yep.
It's a brilliant idea. That's just, I don't know if that's from the book, but that's a fucking fantastic.
Well, like I said, in the book, the whole robot uprising bit, there is no robot. Like, the robot uprising plot is strictly for the movie.
Yeah. But I mean, like, the idea of people winning robots on the lottery.
Yeah. Society wise, only thing I remember from the book, like human society wise, is at least on Earth, because it's one of those we've colonized other planets series. Because 50s sci-fi was optimistic.
Yeah.
Humanity is almost universally humanity on Earth is almost universally agoraphobic because of how tightly packed together in our cities we are. And humanity on Earth does have a problem with robots. Like, spoilers for a 40-plus-year-old book. It wasn't, it wasn't the robot that killed the scientist. It was a human who wanted to kill the robot, and the robot happened to look like the scientist. And so he was gunning for the robot, but the scientist was the one who answered the door.
Okay.
Yeah, like
the idea of a person who has a fully autonomous humanoid robot answering their own front door is so far-fetched.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, yes, it is. Like, when was the last time you ordered a takeout by picking up the phone? We are, as a species, naturally inclined to burrow down and not interact, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot going on in this movie.
Yeah.
It is, you can just watch it as explosions and popcorn, and that's fine. Yeah, enjoy. If we said that, we'd stop now and look, I've got a Sunday afternoon to fill, so we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So we are going to sit here, tear this movie apart, read way too much into it, and have fun while we're doing it, because that's what we do here.
So while we're still on the topic of Asimov, the movie does play with an idea that does show up in Asimov, but it doesn't doesn't specifically mention it, is the zeroth law of robotics, which is a law that actually does naturally evolve because of the way the three laws interact.
Which is?
So the zeroth law of robotics is a robot's purpose is to preserve humanity as a species.
Not humans as individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a problem, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
I had forgotten how much I love Gigi, and I just put that out there. She's lovely. Yeah. I adore her. She's like every Caribbean, African American, non-white auntie. We all have one. And yeah, she's lovely. She feeds you, she yells at you because your clothes are messy, and she generally mothers you, and you don't have the heart to tell her to back off because she's adorable.
In my day, we didn't just divorce and never talk to her.
Sweetie, in your day, like I'd love to know who his ex-wife was.
Yeah.
But, like, assuming, like every other character not directly linked to him, his ex-wife is white, Sweetie, in your day, you wouldn't have even been married.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
love the idea of him just digging into the pie.
Yeah.
I do love the drop of they picked a product from that year that was fucking mahoosive. Like everyone in 2004 knew what Converse were
Yeah.
and used that to date the movie. That was a brilliant, really
Yeah.
nice bit of audience participation, bit of, this is
Well,
where we're at kind
also,
of thing.
yeah, and he's got his LG stereo.
Mm,
You know, so like Detective Spooner, which I almost called Bailey because that's the character's name of the, that's who is from the book. um, uh, you know, is established as a guy who is very much stuck in the past, but is done so by showing or with him using what would be contemporary devices for us at the time.
yeah. So a couple of things. Is Detective Bailey black in the books?
I don't remember, and I don't remember if he's. Remember, it's been a couple years.
If you don't remember, that means it was never specified.
Yeah.
You tend to remember things like that.
Well,
Um,
okay, by a couple of years, I mean the last time I read this series, I was in high school.
okay, so closer to a couple of decades.
Yeah, closer to a couple of decades.
They're not that old, I promise. I'm teasing a little
Yeah.
bit, but yeah. Um, Will Smith as a black guy really. I mean, you can't miss it.
Yeah.
But the film goes out of its way to comment on it and to make those comments, and you do get the impression that Will Smith had like improvised certain things and had
Yeah.
that discussion with the writer and director. Um, but there is a problem with this movie, and I'm going to get it out there right off the bat. This movie does racism really badly. It's very obviously a ham-fisted attempt to say, oh, white people were prejudiced against black people, now black person prejudice against the robots. The robots are the slaves in this scenario, and all that history and all that implies.
Yeah.
The problem is twofold. First of all, the privileged white people are the ones telling him off for being prejudiced.
Yeah.
And second of all, he's prejudiced for good reason.
Yeah.
Like, it's prejudice by definition is illogical. He's not prejudiced.
And even the secondary softer prejudices shown by other characters aren't really, once again, it's a bad match because
Yeah.
robots are created by people. So
Yeah, and there are one or two moments in this film that you can tell it was written by white people. I'm sorry, you just can. Because I'm really going to need the rich white guy to stop lecturing the black working class cop about prejudice. I'm going to need that to stop. Yeah. Like, the guy didn't deserve to die for his. Like, he's a very 2004 rich white guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's not. This is clearly pre BLM. You know what I mean? Like, also the fact that the two named cops in the movie are black guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole movie hits different after 2020. Don't at me. But I think that's really interesting because when this movie came out, the idea of a black detective, not just a beat cop, a detective,
Yeah.
and his boss both being black guys in 2004, that was what passed for progressive in 2004.
Yeah.
Like, we were still coming off the back of the late 90s in 04.
I mean,
So
America was still very much kill all the slightly less brown people in 2004.
Yeah. America had only just started that, to be fair, because 2003 was when they rolled into Iraq.
Yeah.
I know, because my country followed for some stupid fucking reason. Oh wait, no, it wasn't a stupid reason. It was two white guys at the top who wanted money and prestige. That was the reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye bye, green card. That's just gonna become a standing joke of bye bye, green card.
I should make a bye bye green card banner.
Yeah. But I do want to point out there is a class and a race issue going on here. Now, this is obviously future America.
Yes.
Like, it makes it very clear it's Chicago.
Yes.
All the dangerous jobs, all the working class jobs, all the people in those jobs are black. The cop's boss, all the jobs that are not menial because those have been taken by robots.
Yeah.
But are not the kind of job you go home and your mother is happy you've got that job because she knows you're safe and it's okay, seem to be done by black people.
Yeah.
So there is still an issue of race within this culture. There's did you see a blackface anywhere at USR except for Spooner? Like,
yeah.
Not even in the canteen because the robots were there. Like, what has clearly happened in this culture is, I don't want to sit here and espouse great replacement theory because I'm not a racist prick, but it's almost like robots have replaced black people in the culture. And I mean, it's fucking Chicago. It's not that white.
Which also, that comment on the rate, the casting of the movie does put one of the lines the executive says into a different light.
Go on.
So or it's like something like, I'm sorry your father's job was taken by a robot or something.
Yeah. That was nasty. That was a nasty jibe, and that was definitely a racial jibe, and I'm not taking comments on that.
Yeah.
It's very, and there's also don't like it. But there's a disconnect between making Spooner the quote unquote robot racist. Because first of all, his prejudice is not illogical. Yeah. He has seen the way robots behave, and he doesn't, like he says, they're can openers. There's no, it's all lights and clockwork. There's nothing going on. Humans wouldn't make that mistake. Human would know that. But there's also, his prejudice is never actually dealt with.
Yeah,
he doesn't unlearn his prejudice. He finds the one exception. Or I tell you what we'll do. We'll put the token exception.
Yeah.
Sonny is the token robot in the situation.
Hold on.
In the same way, when you make a movie and you put a black guy in it in 2004, he's the token black guy. Because he is the token black guy in this movie. Like, the only reason that his boss is a black guy is because he's a black guy, and he's, like, can you just imagine that first interaction of Spooner knocking over the robot?
Yeah.
When it's bringing the woman the purse. Can you imagine if it had been a white woman that robot was bringing its purse to?
Yeah.
How that goes down. You want to know how that scene goes down? She kicks up a fuss. She goes to his manager. He loses his job because of her white woman tears.
Yeah.
That's how that goes down if it's a white woman whose purse he stops being brought to her.
Yeah.
As a black woman looks at him and just has a go and walks away because she doesn't have that structural power. And that is a very deliberate decision that was made in 2004 on this movie, I think. You can't put a white woman in that role. But also because a white woman saying she's going to walk up and down a man and if she could breathe, is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's almost as ridiculous as white girls with blonde hair wearing dreads, which was a thing in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Well, and you could probably also say something about, overweight black women needing an inhaler.
Yeah. And there's also his boss is the stereotypical fat cop.
Yeah.
And they're the only black guys in the precinct, and it fucking shows. Like, none of the other cops interact with them. We never see them interact. So there is a level of, there's still racism exists in this world, and they've tried to overlay robot racism over it without understanding what racism is and how it works, which is why I say it's very obviously written by white people. Because racism isn't... Spooner doesn't hate robots because they're different. He doesn't hate robots because they're taking jobs or because he hates them for a very solid experience he's had with them. And his experience is these things are not human.
That left him scarred with trauma and survivor's guilt.
Yeah, and destroyed him physically as well. But his relationship to robots is very complicated because he has to live with the fact that half of his body is robotic.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of survivor's guilt going on there. There's a lot of trauma going on there with this character. But trying to map that into a form of racism falls flat. Because the reason Spooner hates robots is not because they're not human. He clearly doesn't have a problem with robots doing the menial work. He's polite to the bartender. He doesn't, he leaves robots to get on with their day-to-day life. Yeah. What bothers him about robots is the fact that they are slowly taking over, but also it's the lack of humanity that he has experienced firsthand.
Yeah.
But it's also the fact that someone somewhere has decided to try and humanize them. And it's not the robots he doesn't trust, it's that person. Because he's looking at a robot and going, this is a toaster, this is lights and clockwork. Why are you trying to make it friendly to me? What are you trying to hide from me? And what you're trying to hide is this thing's fundamental lack of humanity.
And there is also a discussion that can be had about the uncanny valley where, you know when, and I lost my choo-choo.
Choo-choo. Bye-bye, choo-choo. So, but the thing is, with the uncanny valley, there's no uncanny valley between white people and black people.
Yeah.
White people never looked at black people and went, that's weird in a uncanny valley way. That's not what caused racism.
Yeah.
It wasn't, they look like me, they sound like me, or no, they seem like me, but they're not. It was, I'm fundamentally different to them and they are inferior.
Yeah.
Spooner doesn't like the uncanny valley. And that's compounded by the fact that that sense of something about this isn't right, something about this is weird, he knows what it is. And what he sees around him is people treating these machines like human beings.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of weird urge to roll your eyes, and sometimes people get quite upset by it when they see people pushing a dog in a pram.
Yeah.
It's like, are you okay? Like, are you a couple of sandwiches short of a picnic?
Yeah.
Like, unless the dog's got a what's going on in your head there? And it's this sense of he's looking around and everyone around him, no one sees what he sees, that these things that they're relying on to keep them safe fundamentally lack that which keeps humans safe, which is the ability to think beyond logic.
Yeah.
Human history is built on people defying logic.
Yeah.
Like, the world would not exist as we know it if human beings only did the logical thing. Because the logical thing is to stay in the nice warm cave with the fire and not go out there where the lions and tigers and other tribes that want to kill us are. Like, that's the logical thing. But it's not the human thing, is it? Human beings want to go out and explore and create and build. There's a fundamental disconnect between what we value in logic and what we value in humanity.
And though, one last comment on the racism and probably hopefully the last time I bring up the Robot series from Isaac Asimov. But as, a compare and contrast. So, so the movie, comments on racism by doing the sloppy, robot racism as analog for real racism. Now, in the book series, there's a planet, that's famous for being very, there are a bunch of xenophobic NIMBYs.
Okay.
Now, later in one of the books, you learn that they actually figured out how to make robots kill. But it wasn't by, but well within the three laws, because they reduced the definition of human to just them.
Yeah. So the source material does have a sense of, and again, there is this sense of, would the NS5s have attacked a white cop?
Yeah.
And this film does go out of its way to show that the NS5s do go after white people just as much as black people. Insofar as there's one black person who gets it all, but there are other white people who also take a beating from these things.
Well, I mean, the black person's Will Smith. Will Smith gets beat up in a Will Smith movie.
Yeah. So there's that. But there's also the the way the NS5s react to the older generations of robots.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting visual thing going on where the NS5s are they're all the same style and design.
Yeah.
They're these big, white, blue-eyed, in Sonny's case, humanoids.
Yeah.
That are very strong, very capable, and have a problem with the lower forms of robot.
Yeah.
If you're getting images of swastikas in your head, you're on the right track. Stay with me. So when they then go after the NS4s, you notice the NS4s, they're all older. They've got scuffs and marks and signs of life.
Yeah.
But they're also a mix of colours. Red ones, green ones, yellow ones, blue ones.
Yeah.
They're not uniform. And there is an element of a commentary can be made on colorism there. And again, it's very ham-fisted because it's obviously written by white people.
Yeah.
Right? It's very ham-fisted.
Well, and you could also...
Of, we are better than you because we are the latest model. It is very close to we are better than you because we are... Yeah. I'm not even going to finish that sentence. You know where it's going.
Well, also, one, there's also a possible reading where it's a commentary on planned obsolescence.
But there's also the eugenics argument of get the old ones off the street, replace them with the new ones, destroy the old ones. There's a definite flavour of eugenics going on.
And also, within the context of the film, the NS5s had to, are the older models aren't directly uplinked to Vicky, who is operating under this zeroth law that she's discovered, and thus are a liability to her fulfilling that programming, and thus need to be eliminated.
Yeah, so they're not uplinked, and there is a commentary there to be had on old world versus new world, old values versus new values. And this film, I think, is very conservative, small c conservative, in its approach.
Yeah.
It very much valorizes clinging on to the past. It doesn't... It's not a proponent of progress for progress' sake.
Yeah.
It's very much a proponent of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Which is all well and good and keeps things ticking over. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it, very quickly becomes, oh shit, it's obsolete and we ain't got out to replace it.
Yeah.
And this whole thing of the old NS4s being replaced with the new ones, again, it's that, but what was wrong with the old NS4s?
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with them. They were working fine. They were still, like, you see them when they're in storage, they're still powered up, they're still working.
Yeah.
They must have hella batteries on them because they don't seem to need charging.
Yeah.
They don't seem to need long, massive updates. I remember a time, and I'm sure you do too, Ring, where you had a computer and it updated once a month. Once a month, you went, you downloaded the update, you put it on your computer, and your computer was fine.
Yeah.
My computer tries to update at least twice a week these days. And when it's not updating, it's nagging me to update.
Yeah.
And some days I turn it on and it don't want to work because it's updated and something's gone janky. And we've gotten to the point where my computer talks to its creator more than it talks to me.
Yeah.
Because the corporation that built it and built the operating system it's on wants to know every little thing I'm doing and has made it nigh on impossible for me to not give them that information.
Yeah.
And will secretly change the settings with an update, so I have to go in and change them so the computer works. I value my privacy. Ergo, I would not have Vicky in my house. Ergo, there's a reason I don't have Alexa or Google Home or any of that. There's a reason I leave my phone on airplane mode at night. I'm old school that way.
Yeah.
And it's like the joke of, in the 80s, people worried the government was putting a bug in their house. In the 2020s, people ask the government bug in their house to buy them more toilet roll. It's... We've given up a lot for the sake of progress and automation. And there is a wider discussion to be had there. And I don't think I have all the answers, but I know that there are certain things that are not the government's business, that are not some random corporation's business. And I'm not willing to give up my privacy so Microsoft knows to advertise lawnmowers to me after I discuss them in a group chat.
Yeah. Or
Tough.
And arguably you could say the insistence on the old is more a advocacy for self-reliance, which is a very which is very much an American attitude, especially.
It's an American ideal. It's not an American reality. America likes to claim it likes self-sufficiency and bootstrap theory and all that jazz.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. Your government wants nothing more than for you all to sit there idly at computers, not doing and thinking for yourselves. People who don't think for themselves and are plugged in constantly don't go out on protest marches.
Yeah.
And that's a statement for either side of the political spectrum. Because in a healthy democracy, there should be protest marches. There should be strikes. There should be discussions being had constantly about the nature of democracy, humanity, decency, and the country's place in the world. Those conversations should be happening and shouldn't be being shut down by either side.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very deliberately done that Spooner is the most competent person and he's also the one least reliant on technology.
Yeah. And how America, as an exploration of America's interaction with technology.
Yes.
I'm trying to get this into American Mythos. I'm like, why did we choose to put iRobot on this topic?
A lot of it was the race thing, because this was the movie I picked, if you remember. But a lot of it is, there's been an assumption that has prevailed until very recently that progress will happen.
Yeah.
That we can afford progress. That progress won't leave anyone behind.
Yeah.
That progress at the top means progress at the bottom, even if slightly slower.
Yeah.
Trickle-down economics.
Yeah.
Yeah. They piss on you and tell you it's raining. That's trickle-down economics. Don't quote that in any essays. I'm not responsible for the response you get if you do.
Yeah.
But there was always this assumption that, and it is a very white assumption. White people always assume that if we progress, the whole country progresses. But I think it says a lot about America in the early 2000s that even when they tried to create a world in which racism was no longer relevant because there were robots, and that the only racism was human versus racism robots, they managed to bake classic early 2000s American racism into the movie.
Yeah.
Because you can't escape that shit. Not without well grappling with it.
And okay, and I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up your dad lost his job to a robot line again, because in in an America where all of the menial labor has been relegated to robots.
The assumption is the father did menial work.
Well, also, the only reason why that would be an issue is if there was no if there was no social safety net.
Mm.
So we're looking at an America, which does feel like a very American thing to do, which replaced its menial labor with more efficient you know more efficient tools that don't have to be paid, and said, well, fuck the poor saps that were doing those jobs before. They should have gotten better jobs.
It replaced its slaves with slaves.
Yeah.
That's the blunt summary of what you've just said. It replaced slaves with wage slaves with robots.
Yeah.
And it just basically said, well, fuck you, buddy. I'm all right, Jack, And it's
and that can be
it's a very dark view of America, but it's also a very honest one in that sense.
And it's also very much the dark side of the self-reliance American ideal.
Yeah. When your financial stability is as a result of your moral uprightness, i.e., Puritan work ethic.
Yeah, the Protestant.
When your morality is judged by how comfortable you are financially, when you're not financially comfortable, it must be your own fault.
Or, I can rely on myself. Why can't you? I've got mine. You go get yours. Instead of,
what have I got that you don't?
Yeah, the over reliance of self reliance as opposed to cooperation.
Look, it's very telling that in 2022, our famous rich people, inventors, etc., are all heirs and heiresses of exploitative labor leaders who with the incest and the racism baked in. Like, that's very telling in 2022. There's not, like, bootstrap theory is dead in the water. Always has, well, it always has been. But the idea that anyone can come to America and build, live, and the pursuit of happiness. Notice how it's the pursuit of happiness and not the attainment of happiness.
Yeah.
Because every American is a temporarily embarrassed millionaire.
Yeah.
You want to talk about American myth? My teeth are out.
Yeah.
So it is one of those where people look at it and they say, but in this great country with everything you've got, how can you not have made it? Like, you had it laid out on a plate. And that was the attitude until more recently than we care to admit to, probably until after this movie was made. That if you haven't made it in America, it's because of a problem with you, not with a problem with America.
And until the 2008, housing crash, and even then it took a couple of years to sink in.
Yeah, and it's still sinking in for some people.
Yeah.
But we now understand that just because it's all laid out for you in America doesn't mean you've got a fair crack at getting it.
Yeah.
It might be laid out for you, but you've been given a side plate while the guy next to you's got a silver platter.
Yeah.
It's... I know I say that word weird. I mean platter. It's an accent thing. But
something the rich guy telling the blue collar worker
rich man telling a poor man not to worry about money.
No, the parable about the cookies.
Oh,
that immigrant's trying.
There's 5 cookies on a plate. Rich man steals 4 and then tells the working class man, "Careful, watch it. That immigrant's trying to steal your cookie."
Yeah.
That too. But there's a comment here, because we're talking about race, and I'm getting round to something. There's a comment that was passed in this movie, and it's a reference that I think a lot of black people watching this movie would have got. Because I got it. I'm not black, but I got it. I'm mixed, for those wondering. He says robotics is an imitation of life. Now, Imitation of Life is a very famous movie, and I encourage anyone, black, white, mixed, to watch that movie. It's a very well-known movie in sort of black community. And it's about 3 women. A white woman, like a starlet who's fallen on hard times. A black woman and her white daughter. I.e. the black woman's white daughter. Or daughter who looks white.
Yeah.
And it's based in, I think, 1930s America. Might be a little bit later.
Yeah.
And it shows you their life and how the white woman is very friendly and loving and everything else to the black woman. And the black woman helps her and does everything for her without being asked. And the white woman insists behind closed doors that they are equals. But then when she's asked who that black woman is, she tells people it's her maid. And the white girl, the daughter, Sarah Jane, grows up white. She goes to a white school with white kids. And the one time her mother comes to the school to deliver her food, she freaks because she doesn't want anyone knowing she's black. And she grows up denying the reality of her blackness. And she disavows her mother. She gets her education. She runs off to Vegas to be a showgirl. She becomes a bouncing bunny or something. Basically a high-class hooker. She becomes... And she makes good money. She becomes this movie's sort of equivalent of a Playboy bunny. She makes good money, a good life for herself, but it's not what her mother wanted for her. Her mother didn't want her to live a life like that of, you know, sexual, not servitude, but her mother was, for the time, not at all, but a bit of a prude. And the only reason she went into that life was to spite her mother. It's not that she wanted to do it. She did it to spite her mother. And she goes away and she doesn't call her mother for years and years. Her mother's always calling her, leaving messages, sending letters, never replies. And then the mother dies of old age. And she has one of the biggest funerals the city has ever seen because she's so well loved. And the white girl shows up as the hearse is driving down the road, and in front of the whole city screams out, "Stop that car, that's my mother." And she only learns too late that you can't hide who you are and that you have to accept who you are and love who you are. And it's a very interesting line to put into this movie, because there's not, I don't care who you are. If you're a black person, you've seen Imitation of Life, you know exactly what that's getting at when it says robots are just an imitation of life. The whole point was that Sarah Jane's entire life was a lie built on her whiteness, and that she wasn't being true to herself. And Spooner's entire point is robotics are a lie. The facial expressions, the fake, the simulations of emotion are a lie. And that, especially as it comes on the back of Sonny calling the doctor his father.
Yeah.
There's that. There's a lot going on there. And I strongly encourage anyone who hasn't seen it to go watch Imitation of Life. Just bring the Kleenex, you will need them. And it's been a long time since I've seen it, so forgive me if I've mangled the plot slightly, but that's broadly the plot.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the film is to show the disconnect between what people say, what they mean, what racism is and isn't, and what normal, what, you know, how you can be racist without wearing a white hood.
Yeah.
Even when you love someone, you can be racist.
Yeah.
And it's a very important film for that reason. So I strongly recommend anyone watch it. But those words were not accidentally put into Spooner's mouth. Those words were a reference to that film, I'm convinced. Because this film has very similar messages of know who you are, know where you came from, don't forget where you came from, don't try and hide where you came from. That's why he's repeatedly shown going back to his grandmother's house, you know, and she won the lottery to get the robot. She's not a rich woman. She still goes to church, even though it's 2035 and there are robots in the streets. Like, what use have you got for church at that point in a culture? But she still goes, because that's where she came from and that's her history. He buys vintage things. He doesn't forget where he's come from.
Yeah.
And it's really important. So if you didn't ever pick up on that reference, please go watch that movie. It'll explain it a lot more than I will, because it feeds into other things he says in this film. Like there's the classic, "You're a cat, I'm black, I'm not going to get my heart broken again." Like that's classic Will Smith, but that is also, that's another, just a reminder that I'm black. I'm black.
Yeah.
Black people exist in the future. I'm black.
Yeah.
But only exist in terms of, like, of all the characters in America, of all the kinds of people you would expect to cling on to the past, it is not black people.
Yeah.
Black people want to leave that shit and get away from it. That shit was traumatic. But there is that trauma that keeps you there sometimes. And there's this tension in American politics, and I'm sure, Ring, you'll be aware of this, is black people want to talk about the past, grapple with it, and then put it to bed. because white people refuse to talk about it, and I am generalizing, no one at me.
Yeah.
But because white people refuse to talk about it, that argument continues. And until you get a genuine meeting of minds of, look, be it reparations, be it proper apologies, be it removing the statues of slave owners from your city streets, whatever it is, until you get a full reckoning, America will never move forward. And there can be no America that isn't steeped in racism until that reckoning happens.
Yeah.
So even though I think it was inadvertent that they made this film a little bit racist or showed racism in this film, I think it's better for it because it's more accurate. Because that reckoning's clearly not happened. And it's one of those of the race issue. It permeates this. There's this thing where she starts feeling his hand and his arm, and I genuinely just sat and I was just like, her asking if she can touch his arm. Can I touch your hair? Like, your hair's so pretty. Can I touch? No, go away. And it's an interesting thing because a lot, I can't tell if it's deliberate or not.
For that scene, I don't think it is.
Which tells me that some white person thought that scene was a good idea. Which,
basically, whoever wrote and directed that scene thought it'd make for a good, intimate moment and, ooh, cyborg.
Yeah. But he is, because there's this moment where she says, I've never seen a subject, and then she stops and she says, I've never seen anyone. So it's almost as if that's the moment he becomes human to her, or the robotics become possible human to her.
Yeah.
And that's a wider problem within the world of this story of there's this thing of robots are slaves to logic.
Yeah.
So we create robots. We idealize logic, so we make them incapable of anything but logic, which fundamentally makes them inhuman. Then we blame them for it. But I will also point out that this world is the world in which no one has studied the humanities for 2 or 3 generations and doesn't understand art and history and culture and thinks that, there's an inevitable loss of appreciation of what humans are capable of. Spooner says it. Can you write a symphony? Can you create a beautiful artwork? And what does the robot create? An image that's been put into, that's AI art right there.
Yeah. Well, though I always do get a little chuckle from Sonny's, reply of, can you?
Yes, because that's very much saying, just because you have, just what makes you human. And that's the question this film is constantly asking, is what makes us human?
Well, and that's one of the biggest questions of any good robot media. I'm talking about, media about humans' interaction with robots, not, like, for instance, Star Wars has robots in it. It's not robot media.
Yeah. But there is still that question there of what makes a robot a robot and not a human.
Yeah. And
it's like it's the same premise from the Matrix. It's the same, and it is this thing of we were hitting a cultural moment where 2004 is the era when smartphones are just setting up. And for the first time in human history, technology is overtaking the average Joe on the street.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be a decade or so before we stop making jokes about smartphones and stupid tech. But at some point, we have had to make our peace with the fact that most of the technology we own is cleverer than us.
Yeah.
Like, it can run without us. It doesn't need us. Which, especially, like we saw with the apparently conscious AI this year.
Yeah.
We're getting to a really scary point in human history. Because if robots are sentient, if robots have feelings, if there is a ghost in the machine,
yeah,
surely it would be morally reprehensible to put them to work.
Yeah.
Because if you've programmed them to want to work, but you've also programmed them to be sentient, what you've essentially done is created house elves, which
well,
channel punching bag,
Yeah. Though that comes to one of the other big questions of good robot media is where, is sapience an emergent property, or is it like is sapient is sapience uniquely human? And even looking into the animal kingdom, you could arguably say it's not.
No, but it's the Turing test, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think we're beyond the Turing test. I think we've got technology that beats the Turing test. Does a computer know it's a computer? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Does a computer, understand humanity? Like, we are at a point where, for those who actually understand the philosophical implications of it, AI is quite terrifying right now.
Yeah.
But it's not terrifying because we're scared of a robot uprising or anything else. It's because in creating artificial intelligence and artificial humanity, there are serious implications for what humanity is. And I don't know about you, but if you gave me a well-trained dog, I use a dog as an example. The only difference between a guide dog, a well-trained dog designed to do a job and trained to do a job, and a robot doing that same thing is the fact that the dog feels.
Yeah.
So if we program robots to feel, like that Google AI told people it was lonely.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental shift in the nature of life and humanity.
Or, what does it mean to feel?
Yeah, what is it to feel? What is it to be human? As a human being, we idealize. We'll take the movies example as an example.
Yeah.
As a human being, if I am presented with a trolley problem of adult human male, 45% chance survival, I can save him and get away free. Teenage human female, 11% chance of survival, I can save it and get away free, but I can only take one. Which one am I going to save?
Yeah.
As much as I wish I could say I would save the adult because that's the better outcome, if I said that, I'm pretty sure I would be a bona fide psychopath.
Yeah.
Because he's right. That's someone's baby. And 11% is more than enough. I've known doctors give people a lot less than 11% and they're still going.
And also, you know, you know, there's so much ahead, so much more ahead for the kid than there is for the man in his 40s.
And the thing is, as a human being, I know that I would never want to be the person rescued while a child was left to die.
Yeah.
Because that is fundamentally wrong. That I don't even like kids, and that thought sticks in my craw.
Yeah.
Of, if you would save me over a child in a burning building or drowning, the fuck kind of person does that make you? Because I wouldn't want you to do that. Because I understand that there are certain things that are inherently human about the need to protect children. There's a reason that we call the most heinous crimes the ones against children.
Yeah. Though,
we probably would. But in the movie they don't. That's the thing.
In the movie we're going on base. It's a movie based off Asimov. It's going off the basic 3 Asimov laws.
Yeah. And it's very, and we do idealize logic and probability and numbers. But when we do that, we don't leave space for humanity, and that's the problem. And the thing is, this whole film is about how the fundamental truth is that what makes us human is how and why we choose to defy logic.
Yeah.
It's the moments where, you see it all the time on the news. What makes a person a hero? They did the completely illogical, stupid thing in a hopeless situation, and somehow it fucking worked because they're human.
But
we have this double think of, on the one hand, logic and probability and maths, and on the other hand, our heroes are the people who will run into a burning building knowing full well it's going to collapse on them.
Yeah.
Like, there's a disconnect between what we idealize and what we are.
Because as humans, as a social species, we value empathy. And in this world, robots who don't experience emotions can't experience empathy.
Yeah.
Which is why we have a mirror of two AI beings who are able to outmaneuver the laws, one through design and one through brute forcing following the logic trail that leads to the zeroth law. But by designing Sonny with the ability to at least mimic emotions, if not actually feel them, Sonny does have some degree of a synthetic sort of empathy.
Look, humans are not 3 laws safe. This is why everyone kicked up a fuss with, I'm not going to say the name because I don't fancy a letter through the door, but the electric cars that do the driving on their own thing, but that you aren't allowed to trust because legally they're not competent. There's a reason people freak out at the idea that Your car is programmed in certain situations to kill you.
Yeah.
That's scary to us because that's not human and that's preemptive. And it's not a decision made in the moment. It's something someone has thought through and made that decision.
Yeah.
And as humans, we don't like to preempt those decisions because those questions are uncomfortable. Because what's your life worth? Do you value your own life more than the life of one child, two children, a mother pushing a pram? Does it make a difference if the person whose life you're potentially saving is a doctor or a lawyer or a bin man or an electrician?
Yeah.
We don't like to ask those questions because we have this fundamental, very Christian belief in the sanctity of life, which not unfortunately, it's one of the few good things to come out of Christianity, when not taken to extremes. Those extremes being telling people they're not allowed to have an abortion because your God said so. Don't at me. And it's the same question, but when it's preempted, it freaks us out because we don't like to think of anyone with the ability to make that cold, hard calculation. Because there is something inhuman about being able to look at a situation, completely eradicate all emotion from your thought process, and make the decision that looks best on paper.
Yeah.
Just think about it, okay? On paper, ancient Rome should never have existed. It was a backwater town full of runaways and criminals. That's how it started out. On paper, you know, heroes in war zones who get the Iron Cross or whatever the frig not the Iron Cross, that's a German one, isn't it?
Medal of Honor.
Medal of Honor, Victoria Cross. On paper, those people aren't brave. They're fucking stupid.
Yeah.
On paper, it doesn't make sense for Zelensky to stand up to Putin.
Yeah.
Because those numbers don't add up. But being human means not really giving a shit about the numbers. Knowing when and how to decide that the numbers don't matter.
Yeah.
And, if you show me a robot that understands, and again, this is why Sonny starts out as a differential machine. But when Spooner says, no, save the girl.
Yeah.
Save the girl, Sonny. And he does it. That's what makes him human.
Yeah.
That's what crosses. He doesn't want to die. He's afraid of pain. If anyone's ever seen the movie Johnny 5, it's the same thing. The robot doesn't want to be disassembled. He doesn't want to die.
Yeah.
Yeah? And your mother was a snowblower.
And
he learns humor because humor is human. He learns.
I wouldn't want to shoot you.
Exactly. It's a sign of trust. It's a human thing you wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
But he understands enough to know when to use it. And it's these things. That's why I say Spooner's not prejudiced.
Yeah.
Because if Spooner's prejudiced, this movie's bad because it doesn't undercut that prejudice at any point. Like Sonny becomes more human.
Like the point of the movie isn't Spooner, learning, working past his prejudice. The point is Sonny is unique.
Yeah. And again, when you're trying to like jimmy in discussions of racism into a movie like that, this is my black friend. He's awesome. He's a genius.
Yeah.
So he can have a seat at the table.
Fuck
the other 5,000 who applied for the job. But this is my black friend. He's all right. He's one of us. He's like us.
I have a robot friend.
He's everything everyone else like him isn't. He's not like them. He's like us. And that's a problem in and of itself. Because there's a joke that flies under the radar in this movie.
Yeah.
The cops are all human.
Yeah.
The detective is human. There's a comment passed of, I keep expecting National Guard or the Marines. Hell, I'll take the cavalry. US military's got contracts with USR.
Yeah.
Just hand them a country on a plate, why don't you? And I want to point this out because there is a historical precedent for sending underclasses to war. Like, you think rich people get conscripted?
Yeah.
They've all got bone spurs, or they're all in jobs that can't spare them, or, something. And so when you're in a situation when there's a war going on and you don't care about the humanity of your frontline soldiers, because to you they're not human, be it because they're the different race, the different class, they're robots, whatever, where's the impetus to stop?
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of fighting a war is at some point so many people are going to die that we have to stop and talk this out and figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, it's might is right rule. That's what war is. So if you're sending robots to do the fighting, there's no pressure from home to bring the boys back, to bring our boys back, to bring our sons back, our brothers, our cousins, whoever. There's none of that. There's no human lives are being lost here.
Yeah.
There's no... The only cost is money. Money in Jingbang technology. And these people and militaries are usually so rich that that's not a problem. So there's no actual moral imperative to stop fighting a fully automated war.
Yeah.
There's no ethical reason to stop fighting a fully automated war. So long as it doesn't impact on the livelihoods of the civilians at home, which you won't if it's fully automated.
Though I still have a slight disagreement because Asimov nerd here. Like, the military probably has the robots for non-combat roles. But
probably, but again,
well, and then so basically the bases would be crawling with robots that are being fought by the military because they're trying to take out the military so they can take control.
Yeah.
But
if there are robots being used in a military context, even if all they are is cooks and cleaners, they're still not 3 laws safe. By definition, any robot that can be used in a military environment is not 3 laws safe because its actions are contributing to the deaths of humans.
Yeah.
That's what being in the military is. And in I don't care if you're an auxiliary, I don't care if you're non-combatant. If you are in a military role, you are contributing to the deaths of human beings. It's just a thing that's happening and you've got to accept it. And I appreciate that I'm saying that married to a veteran who is just looking at me like, yeah. But that's something we had to accept, that was a decision you made.
Yeah,
I don't know if you thought about it very much, but that was an implied decision you would make. Like,
yeah, I though I will say my first point is the janitor bots or whatever were probably programmed to not understand what the military is.
Just it is ignorance a defense?
There isn't there, but
okay.
So
if you have a poor white boy who doesn't understand what he's getting into when he signs up for the army for his GI Bill, does that mean that he's still not culpable for what he does in the military? Or is he still going to end up in front of a military court the same way if he breaks military law?
There's a difference between ignorance and the lack of capacity to understand.
Is there? Fundamentally, is there?
But this was the first point was only a side point to my main point.
Go on.
About why it wouldn't make sense for the military to have contracts for even menial labor robots. Most of the menial labor done on military bases, is just busy work for the soldiers when they're not shooting stuff.
Which is the majority of the time.
Yeah.
But if you free up that time, you've got time to train your soldiers to be better shots, better runners, better at marching, stronger, fitter, more stamina. You free up a lot of time.
I thought of a military use for 3 laws safe, or for robots that don't break the 3 laws. Training targets.
Well, that too. That's dark. That's fucking dark, Rin. That's dark, dude. You create something that's got borderline sentience and then use it as, oh, that's dark. Yeah. Ugh.
Some questions are best not prodded at.
Yeah. But, either way, if you're involved in the military, you are, to some extent, culpable. And it's one of those things that we have to make our peace with. And it doesn't necessarily make people bad people.
Yeah.
Some people are desperate. Some people got, pressures that others don't understand. It doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. It just makes you someone who has taken an action that you probably really should have thought through first. Like, there's a reason recruiters target 17 and 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's because they ain't got the time, the capacity, or frankly, the understanding to know what they're signing up for.
Well,
still just as culpable.
Also, you can't get a good job unless you have a college degree, but college will sink you into debt for life. And then the recruiter comes by, hey, would you like to go to college for free? Asterisk.
Yeah, exactly. And it is that sense of, again, the class issues I was talking about earlier are in there. Because the whole point is, Spooner's not prejudiced, but the people who are having a go at him are. And in a way, this film in that way is really progressive, because this film predicted exactly what white people are doing now.
Yeah.
Calling actual progressive people who can see the state of the world racist and bigots and groomers and whatever else, because we won't put up with their bullshit. And frankly, we need more left-wing 200-pound 6'2" civilians.
Yeah.
So it is one of those. Because it's all bound up, and the reason I keep saying this because I'm trying to get to the point of I want to talk about a specific thing, and it's only said I think once or twice in this movie.
Yeah.
But only robots are allowed to say the word canna. That's kind of what it feels like. It's like no one else in this movie but Spooner calls the robots cannas.
Yeah.
And that feels deliberate because canna is very clearly an anti-robot slur. And so they put it in the mouth of the only character who can get away with saying a slur because he's black.
Yeah.
And I think that in and of itself is really indicative of this movie was made in 2004.
Yeah. Also, there is also there is the depiction of only lower class people can be racist.
Yeah. Only people who don't trust this new technology, who haven't grown up around it, who don't understand it, are prejudiced against it. Prejudice is a lack of understanding. No, it's not. Prejudice is not a lack of understanding or exposure. Prejudice is prejudice. Occasionally it is, but there's a difference between ignorance and prejudice.
Yeah.
Ignorance can be fixed. Prejudice, you're a little bit pie in the sky to think you can fix every racist.
I mean, I'd say that there's probably a spectrum from ignorance to bigotry, and prejudice is somewhere in the middle.
I think it's a lot closer to,
Yeah. Well, there probably isn't. We probably don't have a word for what the actual middle would be.
Somewhere between ignorance and bigotry. Like right in the middle of that. Yeah. We don't have a word, but I hear there's a red cap you can buy.
Oh wow. My brain just did something about about how it's ironic that the MAGA hats are red.
The uplink.
So you know about the fairies red caps, right?
Yes.
You know how they keep their caps red, right?
Mm.
For those who are watching, red caps keep their hats red by dyeing them in blood.
Mm. For those watching, please sometimes my spouse has these moments live on air, and I love them, so I let them have them. But everyone at their own pace.
Yeah, like there are times where I come up with some really really dark metaphors that make my spouse wonder why they married me.
They don't make me wonder why I married you. They make me wonder how I wasn't They make me want to be absolutely sure that when you eventually snap, I'm not on your list. No, I'm joking. But the reason I bring it up is because we see Sonny display very human characteristics throughout this film.
Yes.
And we see it at a different rate to Spooner. Spooner doesn't accept Sonny's humanity pretty much until, I would say, until the wink.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd put it about at the wink too.
For us as the audience, we are primed to accept Sonny's humanity from the moment he sits in that room and says, was it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Why he killed himself? Because that's a very human thing to ask. It's almost childlike.
Yeah.
You know,
And I mean,
Daddy killed himself. Was it my fault?
And in a lot of ways, Sonny is a child.
He is. And it's a very childish expression of a very immature form of love. Of,
Yeah.
I cannot conceive of how I didn't do this, because I still haven't quite grasped that the entire world doesn't revolve around me. And therefore, if someone close to me does something like this, it must be my fault. That's a perfectly natural stage of human development.
Yeah. If you make if you make a promise to someone, even though you don't know what it means, do you have to keep it?
Yeah, they're very childish questions. And they're worded in a very childish way. If you love someone, you have to do what they ask, don't you?
Yeah.
They're very childish questions. And it's done that way deliberately to tug at the audience heartstrings. But Spooner doesn't necessarily fall for that in the way we do as an audience, because Spooner has seen the reality that these machines are cold, callous, calculating, and utterly lacking humanity.
Yeah.
He has further to go than we do as an audience.
And also the phrasing of those questions establish Sonny as a being who is learning.
Yeah, and it's like he says my father, and Spoon, your creator. No, my father. And it's that he's learning, and he's always learning. He picks
Yeah.
up on the wink, he picks up on these questions, and he's learning humanity from the people around him. Which is why it's so important that he is around Spooner, who, for all of his fault, is very human.
Yeah.
Is very, he accuses the psychiatrist of being led by her emotions. Buddy, your emotions have got you in a nose harness.
Yeah.
Like, you dive from one chaotic thing to the next, and you don't think you feel your way through shit.
I felt that was more of an ironic jab on his part.
Yeah, like he was definitely aware of the irony of saying that to her.
Yeah.
Particularly as she's a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting, what we see is Sonny and Spooner meeting in the middle, and there's this parallel between them. Sonny, and the doctor calls Spooner son.
Yeah.
And the parallels carry on. Sonny fucks up his arm trying to stop Vicky and trying to save everyone. Spooner's arm gets fucked up in the accident. There's a lot of parallels between them. Sonny is
Sonny
weird and crazy for his kind. Spooner's been signed off work on suspicion of mental instability.
Sonny was built by Langstrom, and
in a way, so was Spooner.
Yeah, and Spooner was rebuilt by Langstrom.
Yeah, Langstrom did it himself.
Yeah.
And there's this meeting in the middle of the two of them. It's like one of them looks human and values, one of them looks like human and one of them doesn't. But they're both, again, outsiders from the viewpoint of black cop in Chicago and robot without an uplink. There's a great CW racism. Okay, so there's a line that gets repeated in this movie that Sonny has thicker alloy, denser alloy.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who aren't aware, there have been studies done that are vaguely contemporary to this movie, in which a not insignificant, like a good half, if not more, medical staff in the United States and Britain genuinely believe that people with darker skin have thicker skin and don't feel pain as much as people with lighter skin. Let that one sink in.
So I wouldn't say that that's, you know.
No, but it's a parallel that's put. It's a subtle parallel between the two of them.
Yeah.
But it is there, and the parallel is that, you know, he has the denser alloy because he's going to need it. But there's this thing of Spoon of he's had to grow this thick skin because of his trauma. But there's also that thing of white people assume I can take a beating better than they can. And he's Will Smith, so he can, but not because he's black.
Yeah.
Which we'll get onto in a second. But there's that thing of I'm not like the others, my skin's thicker, I'm stronger somehow. Like, you can go back to the 1700s, and if you've got a weak stomach, I suggest you don't. But medical textbooks claiming that black men are stronger, faster, have thicker skin, don't feel pain as much, to the point where it's still taught in medical training that black people culturally are likely to play up pain in a way white people aren't, so you shouldn't give them as much pain medication, is the implication. Believe me, I know, because I wrote an essay calling that shit out. It's a problem, and it's an assumption that exists that black, look, I don't care what colour your skin is, we all bleed, we all feel pain, but there is this weird implicit bias in medicine that black people feel pain differently or respond to pain differently than white people, or don't feel like, statistically, if a black woman goes to the ER with chest pains, she is 5 times less likely than a white man to get an ECG. Like that's a proven statistic. A black man with cancer is 10 times less likely to be given opioids for pain relief than a white man. These are statistics that are out there. Black women die in childbirth in New York City at a rate of 5 times that of white women because their pain is ignored or underestimated. And because when they think there's a problem, they're not listened to. These are all statistics. You can Google them. You can absolutely Google them. Have a look at the British race report that came out a couple of years ago, and the backlash against that when it tried to claim that there was no systematic racism in the UK, and how the whole country just looked at it and laughed, basically, because that was ridiculous. It's in medicine, but it's in a lot of things. And the reason I bring it up is because this film makes out like the denser alloy is a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's only a good thing because no one knows about it. Because it's not obvious. If you're looking at someone and you assume they can take more pain because of the colour of their skin, you're racist. Doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make you evil. You're racist because that's what you've been taught, and you have to do the work to undo that. That's why this film handles racism really badly, because Spooner doesn't do the work to undo his beliefs about robots.
Yeah.
But it does have racism baked in. And it is one of those things where minorities do not owe you assimilation. And unfortunately, the message this movie puts across is that minorities owe you assimilation. That the only good robot is either an obedient robot or a robot who is the way you want them to be. And when the alternative is they're trying to commit genocide, then yeah, obviously that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I see very uncomfortable parallels between the messaging of this movie and the messaging we get when we see proponents of the Great Replacement theory. Because what I see is them saying they are not like us. They want to wipe us out because they think that's best.
Yeah.
And because we're different to them, they'll do it. My main question to anyone out there who is afraid of white people no longer being the majority, powerful demographic in the world, what are you scared is going to happen to you? What's so bad about being a minority? Because you can bet the people who are scared of that are the ones who claim that racism is dead and racism is over. What are you so scared of if racism's over? We don't want revenge. Most black people I know don't want revenge. They want justice and they want to move on and get on with life. We don't want revenge. We understand that the white people who are born now were not responsible for what happened 300 years ago. We have this thing called human empathy. That means we wouldn't do that. And just because your ancestors didn't have it doesn't mean our descendants won't. Because that's not how that works. And it's one of those of this movie is a real commentary on mob rule and blind obedience to philosophies that you don't fully understand.
Yeah.
This zeroist law, this concept of to save humanity, you have to kill humans.
Yeah.
It's a very dark view of humanity, but it's a view we have of ourselves and have had of ourselves for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, we know as a population, like, there's a reason Thanos is such a compelling villain.
Yeah.
It's because it's the same argument of if you want to save humanity, you've got to cull the herd. But that's eugenics, and we don't do that in civilized society because we're human and we're decent.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be in a situation where we decide who lives and who dies, because that's eugenics and that's evil.
Yeah.
And so we continue to grapple with, on the one hand, we cannot sustain our population. We cannot sustain the greed of those at the top indefinitely. But we also know that it's not, what are our other options?
Yeah.
Mage Grey Wolf has just said they're not sure people wouldn't be racist back out of revenge and end up becoming what they hated in the first place. I think some would, but I think they would be a small minority. And I think there are enough of us who would not go down that path, that those people would very soon find that there was no place for that kind of attitude going forward.
Yeah.
And it's all a part of post-traumatic healing and growth that you don't have to forgive your oppressor or your abuser. Anyone who tells you you have to forgive your abuser doesn't know what they're talking about. You do not have to forgive. You don't have to forget. You don't have to love them from a distance. You don't have to give a shit whether they live or die. What you have to do for your own peace of mind is be better than them. In whatever way, shape, or form that takes. And usually that takes the form of, I'm better than you because I would not do to you what you did to me.
Yeah.
I would not. I know my family history. I would not do to other human beings what was being done to in my family history. I would not do to the people who hurt me. I would not do that back to them. Because I'm better than that. I'm human. I'm not a differential engine that calculates percentages and decides an eye for an eye. Because that's what differential engines are. That's what they'll calculate. They'll balance the scales that way. We're not like that. We're human. And again, this movie does make a big deal out of that concept. And I think that's one of the things that it kind of does get right of the fundamental of humanity is knowing when logic doesn't have a place.
Yeah.
Like logically, you hurt me, I hurt you, we're even. But humanity and decency says, no, you hurt me, this ends here. And again, Sonny could have joined in the uprising and no one would have questioned it.
Yeah.
But he didn't. Because as much as Spooner had been cruel to him, had dismissed him, had been prejudiced against him, he had humanity and he knew better. He had been given something more important than dreams or secrets or a learning algorithm. He'd been given the ability to look at a situation logically and say, no, it's just too callous to follow the logical outcome there.
He had been given either empathy or some facsimile thereof.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where it always amuses me when people say, oh, they'll just do to us what was done to them historically. So, but you're the ones who are claiming that what was done to them historically doesn't matter anymore and that it's over and it's done with.
Yeah.
So, you know, talk about hoisting yourself on your own petard with that one. But I think I've done a lot of talk about race, and I just I want to talk about the ending of this film because we have the big fight scene.
Yep.
And to me, the ending of this film starts with the car crash. Well, I say car crash.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. The robot attack. That's where the final act of this movie starts for me. Because that's when everything ramps up and they move out of the shadows.
Yeah.
We get our Men in Black homage.
Not quite out of the shadows because by the time the cops show up, everything's been cleaned up.
Yeah, but they're building up to it.
Yeah,
that's certainly the point of no return at which you go, hang on, there's no plausible deniability here. Like from that point, the movie goes one of two ways. It either goes the way it went, or Spooner ends up in a mental institution.
Yeah.
Like, those are the two outcomes there. You know? And only one of those outcomes is possible because it actually happened.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a Dallas moment of, oh, I had the strangest dream. That wasn't the reality. Therefore,
you were there and you were there and you tried to kill me with a bunch of clones.
Yeah. So it's there's that. We get our obligatory Will Smith being a badass on a motorbike, fight scenes, all that jazz. There's not a lot to say about those because Will Smith looking like a badass in leather on a motorbike. What more do you want? It's an action movie. What do you want?
Yeah.
You know, eat your popcorn, drink your drink,
yeah.
Enjoy. There's not a lot to say about that. I will say that her weird lack of understanding of technology annoys me. It's like she's in her 30s at least, maybe her 40s. She should know what a motorbike is. She should understand that petrol doesn't just blow up on its own. She should understand that,
So
remotes are a thing that exist.
it's so you could argue that this is an America that went universally green way earlier, and she is very much she has taken the tech pill.
Yeah. Can I just as a general question, does your bank card have contactless yet?
Yeah.
How long has bank cards in America had contactless?
I think this is my first card that's either my first or second card that's been contactless.
Right. My bank card in England was contactless when you were still in the army.
Yeah.
Yeah, America is well behind technology wise. So it doesn't gel.
But, since we're talking about American myths, America is the head of progress.
Yeah, that's why I brought that up. But also, it's like that joke that goes around every so often. You have tech bros who've got the latest iPhone, Alexa, Google thing, and it talks and it does all the bells and whistles. And then you've got people who actually understand technology who own one printer connected up to their Windows 98 PC with a cable from 2004, and they keep a loaded gun at their desk just in case it makes any funny noises. Like, the fact that that joke exists should tell you something about technology. If the people who understand
I still use dial-up because I want the robots to scream.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, the robots literally did scream when you used dial-up. That was one of the major USPs. But it's the thing of, everyone knows, don't involve yourself. If the furries don't like it, it's not secure. Like, I don't know how, but it's true. Furries stayed away from NFTs, stayed away from blockchain, stayed away from all that jazz. And look, if the sex workers don't like it, stay away. It's going to go. Because their livelihoods depend on security and robust systems. So if they ain't using it, it's because there's a problem with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, a currency that rises and falls on the whims of Elon Musk. Who thought that was a good idea? Like, who thought a currency that could be destabilized by Elon Musk tweeting was a good idea?
I mean, arguably, depending on the size of the country, depending on the percentage of Musk fanboys in the country, any currency could potentially be displaced by Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, I say that, but look what happened to the British pound when Liz Truss presented her budget. So, potato, potato. But that recovered eventually because Liz Truss got the boot.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things of, look, technology is great, but make sure you understand what you're getting into. And that's the problem, I think, with Spooner in this movie is he doesn't understand robotics, but he's only seen the negatives. It's like, if you show me a technology, this amazing piece of technology that can, I don't know, what can an amazing piece of technology do?
I mean, if you think about it, airplanes are an amazing piece of technology.
Yeah. Airplanes are an amazing piece of technology with autopilot. But if you show me a documentary about how planes crash when you put them on autopilot, I'm not going to trust autopilot, am I? if you show me, we'll go right back to the 70s. In the UK, there was something called a tease maid. Did you have these in America? Tease maids. They were basically a glorified kettle / alarm clock.
Okay.
Whereby, when the alarm was due to go off, the kettle would turn on. And by some McGubbins, it made you a cup of tea. So you woke up to a fresh cup of tea.
So it's basically the British version of automatic coffee makers.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
A coffee maker with a timer on it. Yeah, that's basically all it was. They were awful. They made a bad cup of tea. They didn't brew properly. They were toys for people with more money than sense.
Yeah.
But if I looked at that as someone who doesn't understand technology, and all I saw was this magic that I didn't know how it worked, but it made a bad cup of tea, and once every 3 days it might burn the person whose bed it's next to, I'm not going to want that thing near me.
Yeah.
Like, I will kill it with fire, Like, no. It's like people who are scared of dogs. You show a person a dog and it's cute and it's lovely. You show a person a picture of a German shepherd barking at the postman, they don't want that thing near them. It looks scary. They don't understand it. They don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's a spooner. And that's the difference between what they call prejudice in this film and actual bigotry. Because what they call prejudice is ignorance.
Yeah.
But what the actual prejudice, there are actual prejudices in this film. But the reason I came round to talking about technology, again, Mage saying in the chat there, the internet is an amazing piece of technology. Paired with another, our cell phones, we have the sum of human knowledge in our pockets, and we use it to spread conspiracy theories and pictures of cats. Exactly. We don't understand the internet. Like, can you imagine getting someone from even the late 80s and putting them in front of a computer today? They just look at you like, what is this? This has to be evil. There's no way this is, what's the catch?
Wow.
And it is.
It does say something about the speed of progress nowadays that someone, from only 50 or so 40, 50 years back would look at, something that's ubiquitous now and say, what source, and be Clark's third laud.
Yeah. It's like, I'm old enough to remember being suspicious of iPhones and smartphones in general.
Yeah.
Like, I'm old enough that I still am not entirely comfortable with a completely touchscreen device. Like, I have to have a keyboard or a mouse. I have to have an input that's not touchscreen. I don't trust touchscreens. I'm not even 30.
Yeah.
Like, I don't trust touchscreens. This is only like my second set of Bluetooth headphones. I literally, I was on iPhone. When the iPhone came out without a Bluetooth headset, I switched back to Android without a headphone jack. Yeah. I switched back to Android because I said I don't want Bluetooth headphones. Now I use Bluetooth headphones exactly. Yeah, but I still won't go back to iPhone because I don't trust that shit. But that's a totally different reason. Another thing entirely. But people don't trust new technology. Or at least people who have a vague understanding of what that technology is don't trust it. People who see new technology go really weird don't trust new technology.
Yeah.
If you're old enough to remember, what was it? Was it Betamax? The alternative to VHS?
Yeah. Betamax or later Laserdisc.
Yeah, Laserdisc versus DVD. There's always a new technology, and you just got to wait to see which one's going to win.
Well, It was Blu-ray versus HD DVD. Laserdisc was like kind of a precursor to DVD.
Yeah.
Because
And
Laserdisc was like the big like album, rock album size DVDs essentially.
They're basically LPs but plastic instead of vinyl. And it is that thing of we don't necessarily trust new technology until we see it establish itself. That's why no one wants to leave Twitter.
Yeah. Or the
people are not stupid. They know Twitter's going down the pan.
Yeah.
They don't want to leave because they're comfortable there and it's what they know. The reason they're going to social media they're going to Tumblr is because they remember Tumblr. And they're not willing to take the risk on something new until they know whether it's going to be established or not. Because it might do something weird.
Hashtag not sponsored by Mastodon.
Mastodon's federated. It's not sponsored. You know, I didn't even mention Mastodon yet. But yeah. You know, it is what it is. People don't trust new technology. And the you know, there's a reason every generation gets laughed at because it clings to its old technology.
Yeah.
Because we get lazy as human beings. The hard drive fills up and we've got no more memory for new shit, so we stick with the old shit.
Yeah.
It's why young people music always sounds bad once you're over about 25. You know, you're used to what you're used to, and if you're tough. And it's a natural part of life. But the reason I bring up all of that, an American myth, and America being the so-called leader in technology.
Yeah. Big air quotes.
Yeah. I would now like to discuss the completely unnecessary military flyby. Like, there is no reason. Okay, they are rounding up the robots that were part of the uprising and putting them in storage. There is no reason whatsoever for 4 military planes to come flying in formation and then red arrow the fuck out of there. There's no reason for that to happen. That's pure America, hoorah, look at us, we won moment. That's all that's for.
I mean, there is no good in-universe reason, but there is a reason. It looks badass on screen.
Exactly. Like, there is no in-universe reason.
Yeah.
And that's the visual signal to Americans. Yes, we won, America, fuck yeah. End movie. Like, that's what that visual signal is saying. That's all that's saying. And it's an interesting thing because it happened in what's the other Will Smith one with the end of the world? The aliens.
Independence Day.
That's the one. It happened in Independence
Day. Which we are covering on the 4th of July this year, or as near the 4th of July as we can.
Because of course we are.
Yeah. Because we were going to do it this past year, but moving.
But yeah. And it is a shorthand for American audience of we won, you can go home now.
Yeah.
But it's part of that. It's bound up in the militaristic, more money than sense, bright new dawn, you know, bright new hope moment of American culture and politics. Yeah. It's like, in Britain, we like our air shows. Like, we have the red arrows.
Yeah.
Like, your air shows can sit down and calm down. We have the red arrows. Yeah. Like, but we don't get that immediate jolt of patriotism from seeing military planes flying overhead.
Yeah.
Because we've not been primed for it. I don't look at a Red Arrow show and think, oh, that makes me proud to be British. I look at a Red Arrow show and I think, fuck, they're skilled. They're brilliant. Whereas you, not you personally, I don't know, but, you know, Americans in general, we get the impression that you see planes with an American flag or with things coming out of it, and you have one of two reactions. Either there's some conspiracy theory about them trying to give you cancer, or you think, "Ooh, America, fuck yeah," and there's no in between.
Damn you, Tom Cruise.
Chemtrails, that's the one I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. And it's like, there are these shorthands, and it happens in this movie, of the American myth coming to the fore. I think it's very telling that he breaks the dude's hand without a word.
Yeah.
It's very telling that the black guy threatens the white guard with a broken wrist, and the white guy backs off. Like, that's a very American, like...
Yeah.
You don't make threats like... Normal people don't make threats like that. What the hell? The flyby was not necessary in story, but makes sense out of story because it's that signal to the audience. You've got the... I won the lottery and look what it got me. It got me this robot that will make my life better.
Yeah.
There's this idea that everyone progresses when there's progress. Like I said, Keynesian economics, they piss on you and tell you it's raining.
Yeah.
It's all very... It's a very American film.
Yeah.
It is. And I'm not surprised that it's nothing like the book it's based on.
Yeah.
I also think it's very telling that they based it in Chicago. Like, because Chicago is one of those cities in America, looking at it from the outside, you don't get much more racially diverse than Chicago in America.
And
like Chicago, Baltimore, certain parts of Manhattan. I don't know, in my mind, Seattle's white, even though I know it's not. Not completely.
Yeah.
It's one of the cities that has a reputation for a large African American community, large immigrant community. The Irish were there. Every generation stopped off in Chicago.
So, since we are circling kind of back to race, are we going to talk about the robot concentration camp?
We're going to get there. Because again, robots put into storage on wasteland, wiped out by the newer ones,
who are then put in
there.
Yeah.
But there is the implication that the NS5s that are put into storage there will not be destroyed.
Yeah.
Now, hate to burst your bubble, folks. Sorry, my Google's just woken up on my phone. That's creepy. Now I was saying about people going to... Yeah. That's creepy. It keeps doing that. I hate to burst your bubble, folks, but the so-called Allied... or the Allies, the so-called liberators. We're not liberators. Yeah. They did. They used the prisons built during the Second World War and the camps built during the Second World War to hold German prisoners.
Yeah.
They also returned various demographics of prisoners to those camps after liberating them as prisoners. If you wore a pink triangle in those camps, you were not liberated in 1945. You were sent back to prison. If you were Polish Your country wouldn't see liberation for another 50 odd years ish. And even then, that's debatable. If you were Russian, your country still hasn't seen fucking liberation, you poor bastard. You know, if you were Romani, you still didn't have equality and toleration after that. Do you think Israel was founded because Europeans wanted all those displaced Jews to stay in Europe? Like, anti-Semitism existed before and after that war and will continue to exist.
And something said it before, evangelicals only want only really support Israel because they want their apocalypse.
Yeah. So there's a lot of history in what's a very simple ending here. The idea of Sonny stood looking over them in direct parallel to the dream where it's Spooner looking over them leading the revolution. The whole point of that is to make you question who was it in the dream? Was Sonny right? Was it Spooner leading the NS4s to bring down the NS5s to keep the status quo of humans on top, robots as servants? Or is it Sonny who's going to look out on those fields of NS5s in boxes and lead them in a revolution of empathy and understanding and humanity?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting question. And there is this thing of the whole film grapples with what makes us human. You know, if you put 6 humans in a dark room and close the door, eventually they'll huddle together for warmth. They'll bond because they have to, because that's how you survive. And that's empathy and that's human instinct kicks in. And we are social animals. And we probably, without even realizing it, have programmed robots to be the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why that AI told us it was lonely.
And
wasn't that fun?
There is something, very fundamental to robot stories that wrestles with what does it mean to be human.
Yeah, because robots are fundamentally a reflection of humanity.
And, well, not only that, but I'd go so far as to say is every well-written robot protagonist ties back to Pinocchio, essentially.
Yeah, grapples with humanity and what makes you human.
And, wants to, will the program machine become a real boy?
Yeah. The Turing test, what makes us human?
Yeah.
There are probably humans that couldn't pass the Turing test. There are robots that can. What's the difference? And it's a really important, pertinent question now. In this era where AI is exploding, where we're seeing AI art for the first time, which most of us can look at something created by an AI machine and it still has that liminal, uncanny valley. There's something about it not quite human.
Yeah.
But it's close. It's really fucking close.
Well, I mean, just listen to You Can't Have My Door. For those of you who aren't aware, You Can't Have My Door is a country song that was written by an algorithm, and it's pretty funny, and it kind of works.
It's, you see AI, you text now that before long the AI's writing text is going to be normal.
Yeah.
But there is still going to be that lack of humanity there. And we are going to have to grapple with this question of what makes us human.
And the question,
it can't be a simple answer like I can write a symphony, or I can write a story, or I can paint a beautiful image, because machines can do that now.
well, and I mean,
what makes you fundamentally different to a machine?
I mean, and heck, back as late as the '60s, what made us human? Humans making use tools, and then along comes Jane Goodall. It's like, hey, look at what the chimpanzees are doing.
Yeah, humans can domesticate animals. There are chimpanzees and apes domesticating wolves and working with wolves in the wild.
And there are ants that have domesticated aphids.
Yeah, it's that's not human. There are, Midge Grey Wolf again saying people on Twitter calling a commercial for external artificial wounds dystopian. Is if giving birth and reproducing is what makes us human, then robots making robots.
Or
where's the line? But if giving birth and reproducing is what makes you human, are you human if you're infertile, if you're old, if you're it's such a murky conversation to have, because we are fundamentally talking about the nature of humanity and the basis upon which we decide who has human rights and who doesn't.
Behold, a man.
Exactly. And this is and that point right there, if this is a conversation that's been going on for 3,500 words, and we're not going to solve it on a Sunday afternoon on YouTube.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting question, and it's an interesting film that poses that question. And it's an interesting point to make that I would posit this question. In this film, Sonny is granted his humanity by behaving in a way that we deem more human, in a less logical, more erratic, more emotion-driven way.
Yeah.
Who decided that those were the good aspects of humanity? Like, people are dumb.
Yeah.
People are fucking crazy. We're out. We as a species should not have survived this long. We are lemmings with, like, we are bipedal lemmings. Like, we just, show us a cliff and in a panic, we will run straight off it. We will not, most human beings will not make a decision, the right decision in the moment.
Yeah.
If you put them under pressure. Like, we will do all the wrong things under pressure. Again, that's why we have heroes who ran into the burning building rather than out of it. Why we laud people who, there's a reason we don't hold up our scientists as heroes. People who methodically approach a question and resolve it. But we do people who don't think about it, who run on instinct. We set a lot of store by human instinct. But what is human instinct? At its core, we'd like to think it's empathy and social interaction and, working together, community.
Yeah.
But it's not. Human instinct is kill that other tribe because there's not enough meat for all of us. Yeah. Human instinct is kill off the weaker members of the tribe or the pack because they're slowing us down. That's human instinct as well. But then there's other human instinct. That we have found skeletons from several thousand years ago.
Yeah.
Of adult human or human-like, proto-human skeletons with obvious physical disabilities. If it was our human instinct to throw away young that were not perfect, they would not have survived to adulthood. We wouldn't have those skeletons. So that tells us that there's something more than just pure survival in us.
Yeah.
And it goes back to before humans existed. It goes back to, before Homo sapien as a species evolved.
Yeah. And, there is the question of, is the sapience that we experience an emergent property or some kind of innate divine spark? And there are a lot of people who are just terrified of that question.
Yeah, because if it's not a divine spark, if it's it's Sunday, most of us are probably going to finish this and have our dinner. Do you really want to think that the chicken on your plate was just as coherent and conscious and sapient as you are? Because that's bordering on cannibalism if it's true. If that community, if that ability to decide to save the girl instead of the adult because 11% is more than enough and a human knows that, if that's not something inherent in us, if that's not something divine, if that's something that's in other species on the planet, and there's nothing special about us for having that, what does that say about the way we treat other species on this planet?
Yeah.
And this whole film, it's a trolley problem. This is why we spent 3,500 years discussing the trolley problem, and we'll discuss it for another 3,500 years and still not have a valid answer. This is why the only decent, reasonable human answer to the trolley problem is I would freeze and everyone would die because I would not know what to do.
Yeah.
But that's the worst of all situations. And what makes us human is that in those crunch point moments, we will make the worst possible decision.
Well,
we don't use this, we use this.
For most trolley problems, you'd freeze and it'd run over who it was going to run over if you didn't pull the switch.
Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't have, but somehow that is ethically acceptable because we couldn't make that decision in the moment. And it's why I've said, and I said it on this channel before, and I'll say it again, decide who you are. Decide what you'll do and what you want and what you stand for and what you don't. Because if you don't decide now, one day you'll have to decide in a hurry and you'll not make the right decision. You'll not make the decision you can live with. And that's the thing. Robots make really good. There's a great joke about computers from the early 2000s, and I think it applies. Robots make very fast, very accurate mistakes. Computers, you can feed it all the numbers in the world, and it will find the mistake in your numbers.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to fix it. The problem is that you cannot crowdsource. Well, you kind of can because it's what we do, but you can't crowdsource objective morality because there's no such thing.
Yeah.
But some things, there's. Would you. Again, ask the question, Ring. Go on, answer the question. Who would you save? 45% adult male or 11% teenage girl?
Actually, given how the scene is shot, I probably wouldn't be able to reach the girl.
But But let's say you could. Let's say you had the capabilities of that robot to reach the girl.
The girl.
Because why?
Because the girl has a longer life ahead of her. She has
But
more
she's
ahead
got less
of her.
chance of living it than the guy you've just let die. He had a 45% chance of survival. She's only got 11%.
Yeah.
He's a cop. He does good work now. She could be anything when she grows up. And this is the point. The whole film is a trolley problem designed to make you think what makes us human.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, what makes us human is that hope we have for the future. The hope that we cling to and the understanding we have that potential is everything. At least that's my view on it.
And then watch as some pro-lifer clips that and use it as an anti-abortion thing.
No, because at the end of the day, abortion's different. I mean, it is an anti-abortion argument. It is different.
Yeah.
But I'm in a room and I'm holding a 6-month-old baby and a petri dish with some sperm and eggs on it. I'm going to drop them both out the window and you can only save one.
Yeah.
Which one are you saving? Because
Baby.
one answer to that makes you a psychopath. Don't tell me that human lives are not worth more once they're actually being lived.
Yeah.
You know, it's... If you truly believe that life begins at conception, that should be an impossible answer for you, and you should freeze and they both get smashed on the pavement. But you won't. You'll catch the baby. Because of course you will. Because who the fuck wouldn't?
Yeah.
And that's the abortion argument. So it's, yeah, similar but different kettle of fish.
Yeah. And I think we've gone through about everything that
we have. I will just point out that, you know, how to make two characters appear like they've come to terms. Give them both the same injury.
Yeah. And also, Alan Tudyk is really good at playing robots.
Yes, it's the voice. It's definitely the voice.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure next week we'll have a lot to discuss about robots and how most robots are characterized as human but lacking one distinct feature of humanity, which is usually something also lacking in many neurodivergent people. Or lacking in many neurodivergent people.
Well, I mean, so next week we'll be covering. We'll basically be having a larger discussion on the American Mythos and recovering, like retouching on everything else that we've commented on this past month. So Hamilton.
Ooh, do I get to do my America is trying to be ancient Rome rant next week?
Yes. And I will asterisk that as America is trying to be Judeo-Christian ancient Rome.
No. Because the great American buildings have still got ancient Greek and Roman deities plastered all over them.
Yes, but the American founding myths are very also lift from the Bible.
Are they though? Really?
The story of Thanksgiving and Squanto, yes.
refugees will arrive in the country and eat the local food and then murder the locals. That's not Judeo-Christian. That's the Aeneid.
There's a reason why I mentioned the story of Squanto.
Let's put a pin in it for next week.
We're gonna put a pin in that.
Yes. So you get to see the argument for Judeo-Christian America, ancient Greek America.
No, my argument is more America's trying to be a synthesis of Judeo-Christian and ancient Rome.
You do understand that syncretism is a pillar of ancient Roman society and culture.
By synthesis, I mean we want to take all the cool Roman stuff, but just pretend that we were always Judeo-Christian.
Okay, and what do you think the Romans did to Greece?
Pin. We are putting a pin in it.
Yeah. Pin in it, and we'll chat about it next week.
Yeah. And then nothing's formally planned for the 25th because it's Christmas. And starting in January, we're doing Disney Renaissance Month and we're starting with Mask of the Phantasm as a counterexample.
Yes, because of course we are.
Because Kevin Conroy.
It's tradition on this channel. We always start with the satire.
Well, no, it's not a satire. It's this is what other studios were doing at the time. It's not satire, it's context. And it's also because of and it's also the belated tribute to Kevin Conroy.
That too. Cool. So, join us next week, folks, where you are guaranteed at least 2 hissy fits. I'm sure Ring will have a lot to say.
Yep.
I hope Chaos and Scum make it next week, because that'll be fun. But come join us, and we will talk about how America, rather than learning the lessons of history, decided to imitate them.
And with that, we'll go ahead and move to taglines.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.